Welcome to this episode of Pharmacy Pathways. I am seated here virtually with Dr. Byron Alston, and he is going to be representing pharmacy leadership, more specifically in health systems administration. And Dr. Alston here, in less than 10 years, has transitioned from clinical pharmacist, graduating from a prestigious residency program, to supervisor, to manager, and now director. So he is going to tell us about his journey and how he had to transition from the hands-on clinical pharmacist experience to now high executive decision-making. I want us all to welcome Dr. Byron Alston. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here today.
I'm really excited to get into all the questions because we always want to make sure that when we are shooting for the stars, that we are taking risks, but also being strategic about it, right? And so hearing your story, you have done exactly that. And so I'm really excited to hear what you have to say, the things that you were thinking about before you decided to go forward in each step. And, we're going to just start it off with you giving us a little brief background about yourself, and then we'll get into it as we go along.
Sounds like a plan. For all intents and purposes, I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I completed my undergraduate degree at East Carolina University, where I had a degree in public health. And there at East Carolina, I knew I wanted to pursue pharmacy. So ultimately, I applied, and I was fortunate to get into UNC Chapel Hill's Acumen School of Pharmacy, where I did my PharmD there. Once I made it through that program, I applied for residency training, and I actually went up to New York City. And I completed a PGY1 hospital residency up there at a large facility and health system in Upper Manhattan. After that, I knew I wanted to return back down to the South, where my community was. And I took my talents back to North Carolina, and that's where I accepted my first position as a clinical pharmacist with a rather large health system in North Carolina. And from there, just kind of moved up and progressed through my career. So started as a clinical pharmacist, moved kind of into a floater type of role in the health system. I relocated regions within the system, and then ultimately I made that transition into leadership. And as you mentioned, started off in the supervisor role and continued that journey to the manager role, and ultimately where I'm at now. Jumped around a lot, moved around a lot, but ultimately it's got me where I am today.
Yes. So for those who are unfamiliar with what the term of director of pharmacy means, especially for over a large health system, can you break that down? What does being a director of pharmacy mean?
So I'll say it looks different at every different health system. Titling is a thing that can vary across different organizations, but within my health system, director of pharmacy really is a leader who has oversight and leadership responsibilities over a team. So in my case, I oversee 3 different facilities. And so I'm overseeing the pharmacy operations at those 3 facilities. What that entails, you have management over personnel. So all of our departments, we have technicians and pharmacists. So overseeing our pharmacy teams, ensuring compliance with our regulatory standards. So we're held to many different requirements and regulations, whether it's from the Board of Pharmacy, whether it's the DEA, Joint Commission, which is an accrediting body, a lot of different requirements, and we have to make sure we're in compliance at all points in time. Also clinical oversight. So within our facilities, we have a lot of clinical protocols and processes that our teams, our technicians and pharmacists are involved in. So operationalizing those, how are we doing different things and ensuring our teams are engaged within the facility to make sure we're taking care of the patient. Then you also have the business side of it. So operations and financial management. So each of the facilities, we have a drug budget that we have to stick to make sure we're being stewards of our resources within the health system. We also have different productivity metrics that we have to meet to ensure that we're appropriately and efficiently and effectively using those resources. But then also operations. We want to make sure that our teams are set up for success and we're doing work that makes sense. We're doing it in the most efficient manner. What else? We have strategic planning. So every year we go into the year with some strategic goals that we know we want to tackle and we want to accomplish through the year. I think that's essential just to make sure we have focus and we have an end goal that we want to achieve. And again, the ultimate goal is to improve patient care for our patients that are coming through our facilities. So a lot of different buckets, overseeing a lot of different buckets, and that can vary again from health system to health system. That's majority of the responsibility of a director of pharmacy.
So as you were shifting or transitioning from each stage, how did you transition your mindset from being I'm on the floor, the one doing the work, to now I'm the one who is thinking how we can downstream it to the ones who are doing the work. How did you shift from front lines to executive role?
So for me, that it wasn't the easiest transition by any means, because at a baseline, I'm a doer. Like if I see something that needs to be done, I just like to jump in and do it, right? Especially if I know how to do it. If it's going to ease the burden on the team, whatever it is, I have no problem leaning into any task, right? Like I just don't. And me being a doer, I have to realize as I continue to progress in my leadership journey, I'm not going to have the bandwidth to do that. Like I'm just literally not, right? Like I have other responsibilities that warrant my attention and take priority, to where I have to leverage the frontline team, other leaders on the leadership team. I just have to leverage those around me. And I think that that comes about from growing and developing your team, right? Like, so the more I can empower and develop our frontline team members to tackle issues or address problems that may come up, the more likely it is that they're going to operate independently, right? And handle different things that they can do on their own that don't require leaders leaning in. Same thing for other leaders who I may support, who are closer to the frontline work. The more I empower them and grow and develop them to take on those tasks, goes just as far with allowing me to be able to focus on the priorities that I have for myself in my role. So I think growing and developing your team, building trust, right? Knowing that I trust them to take on challenges or things that come up, and they don't need to come to me and rely on me being the decision maker. The more I can grow and develop and empower the team, whether it's frontline team members or other leaders that I support, I think that is what allows me to be most successful in my role, and be able to delegate those type of tasks outwards, so that we're all working together to achieve our common goal in the workplace. So that's really my approach to doing it. And again, I struggled with that because I'm a doer. So in any of my roles, you might see me leaning in and performing a task that a frontline teamer may normally, just because that's kind of my innate reaction, is just to do something. And I have to learn to be comfortable, just with more delegation. So that's something I've worked on over the years as well.
And you personally oversee 3 hospital facilities. So what does that look like? Do they each have their own different nuances? How are you managing that on the week to week?
So yeah, I'm fortunate enough to support 3 different facilities within our health system. And yeah, I mean, each facility has its own different culture, uniqueness about each department, but overall they function in a similar manner, with being aligned with kind of our overarching pharmacy goals, right? I mean, you have your bread and butter that's not really going to change from facility to facility, but you have the nuances, since you have different team members working in the facility. You have different facility leadership that may impose different expectations from the pharmacy department. So overall, they function very similarly, but they do have their nuances. And another layer of that is they're different size facilities. So different size facilities, they're going to do things a little different. What a smaller facility can do may not be the same thing that a larger facility can do. So they're going to have their nuances, but overall, they're pretty aligned, and it's really just leaning on other leaders that I have at these facilities and partnering with them to help tackle those nuances and make sure we're doing business that works best for that individual facility. The larger facility that I support, I lean a little heavier into that facility, so I'm there more days of the week. But I definitely like to be as present as possible to really build those relationships with team members, really learn how those departments are functioning. So I do like to be present. The other 2 facilities that I try to hit at least once a week, to make sure I have that presence and that full situational awareness of what's going on at any given time. So yeah, it's a balancing game. It's not perfect. It's flexing here and there as needed, and it's really driven by what my calendar looks like, and my bandwidth, and being able to get to those facilities.
So what does a typical day to day look like in a week?
It's typically an 8 to 4, and again, that could vary. I'm not rigid in the sense where I have to start my day at the exact same time, but I am intentional about flexing that time to make sure that I'm not overworking myself. So a typical day, I mean, within our health system at all of our facilities, we have a safety call that starts the day, and that safety call is really just to bring alignment to all the departments and bring any concerns as they pertain to safety up on the call, that just with situational awareness, anyone needs to be aware. So that's typically how a day starts if I'm at one of the facilities. myself or one of the other leaders were attending that safety call. And from there, it's really, like I said, driven by meetings. So they have meetings that are driven towards clinical initiatives. They have calls that pertain to shortages. We're always encountering drug shortages. So that's something that we discuss on a weekly basis. I also have meetings with other leaders. So within our region, we have leadership meetings to make sure we're aligned and we're figuring out things together, and we're not operating in silos. Have calls that may be facility specific. So maybe a need was identified where they want pharmacy or pharmacists to lean into, or maybe there's an opportunity, or maybe there was a safety event or a gap that involved a medication, and we're figuring out what we can do to prevent that from happening again. So we have our standard meetings from week to week, and those focus primarily around the business of pharmacy, and our operations, and any clinical initiatives. But then we also have one-off meetings that are more based around the things that I kind of called out. So that's what it looks like. I will say on any given day, my day can be filled up with a lot of meetings. So that's one aspect of pharmacy leadership, where meetings will be a thing. But in between meetings, I try to engage with the team as much as possible. So checking in with team members, making sure they have the resources they need. Are there any improvements we can make, whether it's workflow in the department, whether it's different ways we can be doing some of our processes, really trying to just engage with the team and be as close to the work as possible, so that I'm best informed when I have to make decisions that impact the entire department.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you're kind of the middleman, so to speak. Like you are bringing information from those who are on the front lines up to the top of the chain, and then you're bringing information from the top of the chain down to those at the front lines. And then you're also speaking laterally to your peers to make sure you're all on the same page.
Yeah, that's definitely an accurate statement. It's definitely bi-directional. Definitely want to listen to the thoughts and ideas from our frontline team members, but then we have things coming down from senior leadership that are really must do's, can't fail, right? So being that intermediary that can communicate either way, but then also partnering, like you said, laterally. We partner closely with nursing in all our facilities, because pharmacy and nursing have an intimate working relationship in the acute care setting, but also facility leadership. Facility leadership, they want to make sure we're meeting our quality metrics, our financial metrics for the facility. So there's a lot of partnership that occurs at that level as well.
What does success look like? What metrics are you and your peers looking at when you're determining whether you're successful for the day, that quarter, that year?
For the day, my personal metric of success is really, I try to clear out my inbox, whether it's emails. I like to not take many things into the following day if at all possible. So making sure I tackled as much as possible for that given day. Obviously, it's a balance of what needs to be completed that given day or what can wait. But I like to feel that I've accomplished. I try to make a to-do list each day and making sure I accomplish those tasks. So that's kind of my personal measure of success for any given day. But more broadly, I would say you just have different buckets, right? So financially, right, we have a drug budget that we have to stick to. So making sure we stay within that drug budget. We have productivity measures that we have to meet, and that's productivity is really just a way to make sure we're adequately using our resources, right? We staff technicians and pharmacists within the department. Would love to staff as many as possible, right? But we're only given a finite number of resources, and making sure we're maximizing how we use those individuals to carry out the function of the department are crucial. So making sure from a financial standpoint, we're hitting on those two things. And then I said each year we really develop strategic goals and we do strategic planning, and we set typically 2 to 3 goals. And those are long-term goals, right? They're annual goals. So they're not things you're going to accomplish within 1 month, 2 months. So making sure those stay front of mind, and we're doing the work to accomplish those goals by the end of the year. So that takes intentional time discussing different processes with the team, partnering with maybe other system pharmacy areas to make sure we have the resources and information we need to maybe tackle a strategic goal. But ultimately making sure we prioritize that and we're keeping a good pulse check on how our strategic goals are going by the end of the year. We can say, we moved the mark in those regards. One last really centers around our team. I'm big on having an environment where people enjoy coming to work, right? Like, I mean, we spend a lot of time in that environment trying to make it as enjoyable and as positive of a culture as possible is critical for me. Ensuring I'm staying engaged with the team and hearing suggestions and identifying ideas that team members may have and figuring out ways to knock down barriers to make it a reality if feasible and if possible. So that's a huge one, leaning into the team and growing and developing them and really allowing them to be the voice and empowering them to really drive the work that they do as opposed to coming top down is critical. And all that shows within your retention, right? Like, I mean, if I'm turning over team members all the time, that can be a result of what's going on in the department, right? The culture within the department, how team members feel when they show up to work. So making sure I'm keeping a good pulse check on that and promoting a positive culture that's enjoyable for team members to work within, that is a true measure of success when you look at retention and how often you're recruiting for more team members.
Yeah, there's a lot of skills that you need to be doing all of this effectively. I want to get into each of those separately because some of them are innate and then some of them are learned. Let's talk about your business acumen. So, what it takes to understand the business of running a health system. Where did you get that knowledge? How did you accumulate that?
For me personally, it was really trial by error for me. So I was fortunate enough to minor in business when I was in undergrad. So I did get a minor in business administration. Oh, I always had an interest in business and the business side of most processes and money, like things like that, and figuring out how to manage money. It always sparked the interest in me. So I minored in business. And then shortly into my leadership career, I did pursue a MHA, so Master of Healthcare Administration. And within that graduate degree, there's a component of business. So I took economics classes, and other business courses that really solidified some other business principles, and then also some health courses that tie it to how business ties into healthcare. So definitely took that coursework in that degree, but I would say it doesn't 100% translate into my day-to-day job, right? I think it laid a foundation in which I was familiar with different terminologies and concepts that may come up within my role, but it wasn't 100%. It didn't translate into my role. So really moving into leadership and day to day, getting involved in different activities and processes and meetings and speaking with other leaders and my more senior leaders, really developing that skill set is where I was able to grow and develop in that area. And again, I think my trajectory in my career has really been very logical, and I've learned those things along the way, right? Like, so I learned it to where maybe I wasn't 100% responsible for it, but I learned it and I kind of had an idea of it to where when I went into a role where I was more responsible for those type of things, I was familiar and I could just continue building upon those things. So that's really how I developed my business acumen within pharmacy.
So, where were you in your stage of your career? And what was the driving factor to make you take that additional education? Because this is post PharmD, right?
Yeah, so definitely post PharmD. I will say when I was in pharmacy, I contemplated completing a dual degree, the PharmD MBA program. I probably was deterred from taking that on probably due to cost. I mean, we all know pharmacy school is not cheap. And I think at the time it might have been an additional year and a half, in addition to getting the 4-year PharmD degree and the additional cost. I just wasn't in a position that I wanted to take that burden on. So that's kind of what deterred me at that time. But once I transitioned into my first leadership role, so my first formalized leadership role was a supervisor role I was in. And in that role, transitioning into a leadership role so early on in my career, I kind of had it made up in my head that that was the direction I was going to go. And at that point, I knew it it would make most sense to go ahead and knock out a degree program that I may likely need in the future. As you move up in leadership and job descriptions for senior pharmacy leader roles, typically you have to have an advanced business degree, whether that's an MBA, MHA. That is a typical thing. And I knew If I didn't want to do it now, I definitely wouldn't want to do it later on in my career. So doing it while I still felt like I had the bandwidth, the hunger, the drive, all of the above is kind of what led me to just jumping right in, right? Literally, I would say months into me being into my first leadership role, I enrolled in the MHA course or degree program rather, and started that.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people that do what you did. They wait until they're working and they've put some time in at a particular system that the program or the system has some financial incentive to go back to school because they want to help build up people, raise up people within their own system as well. So, was there any financial benefit to going back to school? Because you said before that was your detour. Did anything shift financially that allowed you to go forward in 2020?
So yeah, a couple of things. There definitely was assistance provided by the organization I work for in the terms of I believe there's a discount for actual tuition. But then also as a benefit of being a team member with this organization, they had tuition reimbursement. So there was a finite amount of funds and money that I knew I could receive every year for being in the degree program, and that helped offset a lot of the costs. Also, at this point, I knew I could financially afford a degree program. I'd been working as a pharmacist for a couple of years. That was another factor that went into just starting the program when I did.
Okay. All right. I like to slide questions like that in there. It's
Yeah, no,
important
it's
for
a huge consideration. I mean, I know most individuals. I mean, the cost of higher education is can be a barrier for many. And if it's not a barrier, it's surely a burden. And the cost is it's only rising. So I think being intentional and figuring out if you're able to take on any debt that you may incur by pursuing a certain career path is, I mean, being intentional, you just have to do it. I think it would serve you very well to make sure everything's aligned in that sense before taking on any type of educational debt.
yeah. See, I told the audience that you are strategic and how you navigated things. Is there a quick thing before we move to the next question? Are people able to research in advance which organizations offer these type of going back to school fundings before they commit to working at an organization? Is there a way to strategically do that on the front end?
For sure. Tuition reimbursement is typically a benefit that's no different than a 401k, any other health benefits. And typically those are readily available when you research different organizations that you wish to be employed for. And if it's not readily available, typically if you touch base with the human resources department of any organization, they can kind of share the benefit offerings when you're employed within the organization.
Okay, you guys heard it. Get to researching. All right. What are some other elements of the job that are not in the job description of a director of pharmacy, but they play a huge role in you being effective?
One that comes to mind is change management. A lot of different things are changing at any given point within any of our facilities, any of our departments. And I think being a champion for change management is crucial, especially when you're leading that change management amongst a group of team members or individuals. I think most people at a baseline, we enjoy doing things the same. Like any type of change can bring upon some level of discomfort. And it's easier just if something's working, if you've grown accustomed to something, you're good with it, right? Like you're good. And when change comes about, it can brings a level of angst, anxiety, frustration. And I think being in a position to communicate and really bring your teams along to understand the why behind change, I think it helps um promote a positive outcome from the change. Typically, when we're implementing some type of change, there's definitely a why behind it, and there's a reason why we're doing it. And typically, it should be to improve whatever it is that we're targeting. And I think being an effective change agent amongst your team just allows that change to happen easier. So I think that's a huge skill that leaders can possess and work towards developing that can go a long way. like I said, we have things changing all the time within our departments, whether it's certain drug we carry, or it's a formulary change, whether it's a process we're changing, a workflow, whether it's a new initiative that we have to do. It's kind of a must do, can't fail. This is a process that we have to do, something we didn't do before. It initially may sound like it's more work, but it's something that we need to figure out how we can operationalize it. So things like that come about from week to week all the time. And I think that would probably be my number one aspect that one may not readily think about.
Excuse me. I hope you don't mind if I cut in for a moment.
Hurry up.
Number one, thank you for watching. I hope you're learning something new in this episode. Number two, which is the reason I'm here, is if you don't mind, could you be so kind and like this video or hit the subscribe button?
I mean, I've always subscribed.
By subscribing, you're letting YouTube know that my content is providing you value, and that ultimately helps the channel grow and reach more people who need to hear these conversations. You can also subscribe to the Pharmacy Pathways newsletter to get access to exclusive episode content. Newsletters go out in the same week of the episode. You'll receive a structured summary of each interview, expanded guest bios, and exclusive sneak peeks of future episodes. Subscribe at pharmacypathways.org. Link is in the description. Oh, and one more thing.
Hurry up!
If there's a specific topic or career you'd like to see featured, you can let me know by filling out the audience feedback survey on my website. And if you'd like to be a guest, there's a guest sign-up form on my website as well. Both of those links are in the episode description. Okay, let's get you back to the show. I'm assuming that means you have to have a high level of emotional intelligence, because you already have to think about the resistance that's popping up in people's minds that may make them resistant to the change in the first place. So you have to kind of be forward thinking in that and coming up with solutions or explanations for those in advance. Also, communication. You need to be communicating effectively. How did you hone these skill sets?
So as a leader, I mean, there's constant leadership development, right? And a lot of it, you have to be proactive and take the initiative, right? Whether it's researching different books you want to read or different podcasts you want to listen to. I mean, you have to be intentional about areas that may not be innate or just come natural to you that you want to develop on. Like, you have to take the initiative to do that for sure. Some organizations, mine being one of them, we had different avenues and meetings and workshops throughout the year that hit on a lot of leadership development. So some of it you can get through your job, but I definitely think owning it and looking for avenues to develop in areas that you identified, right, comes back to self-awareness. We're all not perfect at everything. No leader is just great at every aspect of leadership. So being self-aware and identifying where you have room to grow and making a plan to tackle that, I think is critical. Change is always coming about, and I most certainly haven't always gotten it right. And there are times where I probably still don't get it right. And I think it's about reflecting on those moments and figuring out how it went, how the team received it, what was the outcome of it. Did the change go over nicely? Did we succeed in that regard? Whatever it is, and developing in ways that would help prevent that in the future, I think it's critical.
When it comes to managing people, that can be a challenge in itself. I'm sure you are managing different ages, different genders, people coming from different backgrounds, different social determinants. All of these things really dictate who someone is, how they think, what their expectations are at work. How do you manage so many different types of personalities, ingrained belief systems that are coming on your team, and how do you get them to work together?
I think you called out the term earlier, but emotional intelligence, I think, goes a long way, specifically when you're interacting with team members that you support, but really in any setting, right? I mean, emotional intelligence is about being able to identify, acknowledge your own emotions, right? How you respond to certain situations, but then also being able to acknowledge and identify how others respond and really influence their emotions in certain settings. So I think the more able you are to do that, I think the more successful you can be in that regard. So when you're dealing with teams of 30, 40 individuals, you're definitely going to have a lot of different personalities, and diversity is great, right? I mean, we want individuals within our departments that have diverse perspectives, backgrounds, training, all of the above to make sure, I mean, we're tackling the work that we're here to do. We're taking into account all those perspectives, and hopefully it allows us to arrive at a solution, a way of doing things that best serves the ultimate goal of taking care of patients. So being able to communicate with individuals that may differ from you, I think, is a huge trait or characteristics that leaders should have. I think being able to have that candid conversation and get to the root of what occurred and why it happened, and understanding what may have led there from an emotional standpoint, right? What led someone to get to whatever the action it is that occurred. Typically aligning team members with expectations and the goals of what we're trying to achieve, while being empathetic to whatever it is, whatever the barrier there that presents itself for why they can't or why they're not aligned with that, I think will allow you to find kind of some common ground to move forward on.
Going through each of the different phases of your journey into your executive role so far, there were opportunities that presented themselves for you. And when those opportunities came, you didn't let them pass you by. And I think you have a lot of insight and wisdom to offer people when it comes to having a good internal barometer. If there's a door that's opening, whether you are fit to walk in the door at that time, or whether you need to hold out a little bit, gain some more education, some training, skill sets, and then try to walk through at a different point when you truly are ready. But your first leadership opportunity came 6 months after your first job coming out of residency. So tell us about that, because the average person getting their first job, they graduated residency, they're working for 6 months. That person usually is going to be very hesitant to take a leadership role. So let's talk about that. What was going on at that time?
So through my training, again, I always told you I had that appreciation, that interest kind of in business and business management. But there was always a little piece of me that had an interest in that. I would say when I was in residency, I completed two administrative rotations within the residency, and I really enjoyed working with those leaders and seeing the work that they were involved in, and kind of having a seat at the table to make those decisions and carry out different initiatives within the pharmacy department at that institution. And I really enjoyed it. So I knew at some point in my career, that's where I wanted to be. I didn't have a timeline for it. It wasn't front of mind. I just knew at some point I definitely wanted to get into leadership. So I accepted my first role as a clinical pharmacist. I was actually in that role for a year. And then I moved into a float pool type of role where I supported, kind of on a float pool capacity, multiple facilities. And I was in that role for 6 months. And the primary facility that I was at, I developed a relationship with the leaders in that department pretty early on. And I think casually I expressed interest in leadership and management at some point, just casually. And shortly after being in that role, I think opportunity opened up. I think a supervisor level role opened up at the facility. And because I had casually expressed, some type of interest there, I was considered for the role, or I was encouraged to go apply for the role, actually. Had that not happened, right? Like, I think just having that baseline interest, communicating it, I'll say in that moment, it probably wasn't intentionally communicating it, right? I didn't have some ulterior motive to mentioning it at the time, but that conversation, expressing it, had individuals thinking about me when opportunity presented itself, right? And seeking me out for my interest in the role is kind of what led me to apply and ultimately get the role. So I think that this goes a long way with saying never shy away from expressing what it is you're interested in, and where you may see your career going. I'm talking with anyone, right? I mean, you never know who knows who. And I think relationship building and leaning on other individuals to go a long way as it pertains to networking and opening up the door for different opportunities.
That's awesome. Okay, so now you're in the supervisor role. How long were you there before the manager opportunity comes up?
Yeah. So I was in the supervisor role for about 2 years. My primary responsibilities were overseeing our second and third shift operations, as well as our sterile compounding areas. So we had a rather large IV room. We had a chemo satellite where we spread a lot of our hazardous medications. So those were the main buckets that I had in that role. And those are some challenging buckets. So I'll say that's where I learned what it takes to be a leader within a pharmacy department. I really learned how a leader functions and what all they're responsible for. Managing personnel or team members, a lot of that occurred in that role. Again, because those are some challenging buckets to have. Overseeing second and third shift operations at times, a lot of times I was the only leader in the department or in the building, right? And managing teams, being that only person, it can get challenging. But again, it only allowed me to become a better leader. So yeah, that's where majority or the bulk of my introduction and development as a leader occurred. And a lot of it was driven around supporting frontline team members, supporting frontline operations, getting in the weeds, leaning in when I needed to, right? If we had a call out or we had a gap somewhere in operations, leaning in and supporting the team when needed. So a lot of that developed in those 2 years in that supervisor role. And from there, opportunity opened up at another one of our facilities, and it was a manager level role. And again, that was just the next natural progression within leadership within our health system. So the opportunity opened up and presented itself. I'll say it wasn't in the most ideal geographical location, but it opened up, and I knew, I mean, again, being a fairly young leader and then wanting to take that next step into a management role, it may not be just the most shiny and appealing position, but it would get me to that next step, right? So I reflected on it and I thought about it, and ultimately I decided to go out for the position. It being not the most desired location allowed me to have limited competition for the role. And ultimately I was able to land that role as well. And in the manager role over facility within our health system, that's the most senior pharmacy leader at the facility level, right? So anything that's being asked upon the department within that facility, whether it's from the facility leaders or anything, be in that manager role, I am the point person. I'm overseeing that specific department. So in that role, I was able to build upon supporting frontline team members, of course, right? I've already had experience leaning in, getting into the weeds, understanding the different processes that these frontline team members are doing. But now I could build upon that. It's setting the vision and strategic direction for this specific department. Now I'm the face of the department where I'm building relationships with nursing leaders and other departments, whether we have to address a different process or our workflow isn't working, or there's a breakdown in communication somewhere between the departments, those type of things. I'm now partnering with external stakeholders in the facility. And that's, again, developing a different skill set that I didn't have in the supervisor role, where I was very much concentrated within the department, tackling issues within the department. Now I'm more outward facing and engaging with individuals outside of our department, as well as engaging with other pharmacy leaders that are at other facilities across our health system. So again, just a natural progression to that next level. That's where I gained a lot of those skills. And I was in that role for about 3 years. I was in that role before ultimately transitioning into my current role where I oversee a couple more facilities.
Okay. And how did this current role present itself?
So I think when we started our discussion today, I kind of told you how titling and leadership structures within health system pharmacy can vary dramatically between organizations. And we just got to a point within our region, within my current health system, that the leadership structure evolved to where we kind of wanted to move to a model where a leader oversaw a couple facilities. So this was a newer type of role. But again, it was me excelling as a manager at my current facility, and then just taking on additional responsibility overseeing a couple other facilities. So nothing crazy new, but I'm just taking on more responsibility in that regard. So that's where the position came about. So in addition to supporting the facility I was already supporting, I started supporting 2 other facilities as well.
That was a good synopsis of everything that was lining up from position to position. So, how were you feeling at each step? So, it's very clear that you knew early on that you saw yourself progressing into higher leadership throughout your career. But were you confident each time that this role came up? You were like, I got this. Like, I'm going to apply for this role. I definitely can do that well. I'm just going to go for it. Were you extremely confident when you saw the job description? Did you know how to do everything that was on the job description? What was going on in your brain that led you to ultimately pursuing or putting your name in the hat?
I would definitely say confident. I think just my personality and how I show up to anything in my life, there's a level of confidence there. I wouldn't say overly confident, by any means, but definitely confident that I am able and capable of being in whatever role I choose to pursue. I think at a baseline, I possess that. But on the flip side, definitely some uncertainty there, right? Like not knowing that there are going to be things I do not know. I'm going to approach situations that I'm not going to know how to handle. I'm going to hear different things that I have no clue what that is. All those things are going to happen, but I don't think that, I mean, that's natural to happen in any new role, right? I don't think that's unique to anyone. I don't think anyone steps into a new role that they're going to know how to do everything. And I think realizing that and being okay with that allows you to not shy away from that. Again, any of the leadership roles that I accepted, I knew it was going to be a level of what am I getting myself into? But I didn't shy away from it. And it was it allowed me to take on those roles, lean in, with the understanding that I was going to learn a lot. I wasn't going to know everything. And I mean, after those initial, 6 months to 12 months, you settle into any role, right? Like typically after a solid year being in a role, you might not know everything, but you've settled into where you feel comfortable in the role. You know where to go and who to lean on if you do encounter something you don't know, and who to leverage, what relationship to leverage when you need assistance or need support in any regard. So I think that's the the most valuable thing to understand is that you're not going to know everything, but knowing where to go and who to lean on in those situations will go a long way. So not shying away from roles just because they may seem intimidating. I think leaning in to some uncomfort or discomfort rather, kind of the outcome of it can be rewarding, and allow you to continue to grow, and evolve in whatever role you're in. I think one luxury that I had was my growth and career trajectory thus far has all been internal within one organization, right? The steps I took were very logical progression steps to get to where I'm at. So anyone observing or other senior leaders, they kind of see that, right? Like I stepped into a role, I was successful in that role. It makes sense. I might be ready for the next role. Now for individuals coming externally, right? I think your resume may have to speak more of what you did and how you interview, communicating the things you've done in past roles. Those are the things that are going to go a long way for someone evaluating your readiness for a certain role, right? Like I have to lean more on the things you did in prior roles that should be called out on your resume or CV, as well as through a formal interview, right? Asking you the appropriate questions that will help me discern and tease out if you have the qualities and traits that would allow you to be successful in this role. Not that you'll know everything, but to be successful, right? So there are different things that you look for, but the biggest thing is having that open mindedness to that you're not going to know everything, and that who and what to leverage to be successful in your role.
Yeah, that's good. I'm really asking these questions for the people such as myself who deal with imposter syndrome. And I think everybody might have a little bit of that deep down inside, whether they acknowledge it or not. But the key word is like imposter syndrome because it's a false belief that you are not adequate or fit or prepared. We assume that because we don't know everything that we're not qualified. And I really appreciate you debunking that. Also, it's important for us to know that the hiring managers are aware of that as well. They are not expecting these candidates to come in 100% perfect. They do have high expectations and standards because they want to succeed, but it's important that they know that there is a level of we're going to have to train them up in some things. All of this is good. So, what is the difference between somebody who is overly confident and they're missing the mark on that internal assessment versus somebody who really needs to stop playing around and shoot their shot?
So I think for me personally, at least I can say that in my role as a clinical pharmacist, I felt pretty early on like I got this. Like I felt comfortable in my role. I felt like I felt good at what I was doing. I just felt like I just did my job very well. And to the point where it got a little monotonous for me. And a little mundane to where I was ready to get involved in different things. And I think even in that role, I took on some additional responsibilities of precepting, little things that you can do that switch up the day to day. You're not just doing the same thing. But I think that's one indicator, right? Like you're starting to feel like your role is monotonous, or you're not unmotivated, but you're losing motivation in your role, and you're looking for challenges and stretch assignments and things like that. I think that's an indicator that you may be ready for kind of the next thing, or a different type of role. And before formally, in my case, if you're referring to leadership, before stepping into a formalized leadership role, there are ways to, get your feet wet. So a lot of organizations or health systems, they have lead pharmacist roles, right? So I could have went from being a frontline pharmacist to now I'm stepping into some type of leadership, lead pharmacist role. So not a formalized leadership and having direct reports and handling human resource type of needs and concerns, but I'm leading the day-to-day operations within this department, right? Like, and I'm a conduit between frontline team members and leadership team. So that's a stepping stone that you can take before formally transitioning to a leadership role if you're not sure. So those indicators of you're looking for the next thing and you're looking for a challenge. And most individuals going into leadership roles are taking that next step to the next level. One of the main reasons they're doing that is to look for an additional challenge, right? Like we look for the next thing, or we seek growth because we welcome challenges, because challenges promote growth, right? And I think that's even more validation that nobody's expecting you to know everything. So that's kind of what I would think about if I'm trying to figure out if I want to take the next step into a new role. I think the other part of your question was being overly confident. I think it's never great to be overly confident, right? Because when you're overly confident, you may think you know it all. You may not ask for someone else's opinion. You operate maybe by yourself, or you don't get as many opinions and that diverse thought as another might would in those in those instances. So I don't think it sets you up for success. I think having a healthy level of confidence that allow you to not shy away from situations, take on new challenges, but still having that appreciation that you don't know it all, I think is best case scenario.
All good things, all good things. And I also just want to add in, I'm sure that your level of confidence continues to grow and your faith in yourself continues to grow when you have seen yourself do it before. So it takes that initial step and you're like, okay, I took this step. I figured this out. I did this well based on how I handled this circumstance and based on what I know about myself. I feel like I can do this again and continue to replicate that, but with a higher challenge each time. Knowing that you are a person who is you're not just going to rely on the resources the job gives you, but you're going to seek outside externally. You're going to be listening to those podcasts, reading those books, figuring out how you can excel at that role outside of what they're going to be providing you has to bring some level of additional confidence to the plate because you know that you are a person who does what it takes to excel. As you look back over your career thus far, what is one thing you wish you could go back and tell younger Byron, who was just starting out his journey? Is there something that you wish you could share with him?
I would say being open-minded and definitely prioritize the importance of relationship building. I would say being open-minded, obviously, because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what's out there. And if you don't have an open mindset to different opportunities, you may miss something, right? That may be perfect for you. You may miss a role or opportunity that is completely aligned with your purpose. Also valuing the importance of relationship building. I mean, anywhere we work, we're working alongside others. And I think making sure in whatever the setting, whether it's personal, professional, just really honing in on the importance of establishing true and genuine relationships with others, right? I think it's rewarding. I think it allows you to see diversity of thought and get to know others. I think it can potentially open up other opportunities, right? Having those relationships with others who may work in a different setting or maybe doing something that you're curious about. Having that relationship will allow you to lean in a little more on that. So those are probably the two things. I would say having an open mindset and prioritizing relationships with others, I think can go a long way and can really have a huge impact on kind of your career journey, your pathway.
What is something that they can put into place next week to get things going, light that fire up under them and put things into motion?
So I think most importantly, figuring out or putting some work in identifying what it is that you want to do and kind of where you see your career go. I think you have to do that first, right? You have to figure out where your interests lie, what's most important to you as it pertains to a career, and start identifying some roles or positions or areas within pharmacy that kind of align with those things. That would be number one. Number two, then start researching, right? Start reaching out, start leaning on your community, your network of individuals that can connect you in those areas, right? Like leveraging, and that goes back to the relationship building I was just saying. The more or the bigger your community or your network is, the easier taking that step will be. And that will allow you to get firsthand experience or insight into those different areas.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience before we close that I may not have addressed or brought up through our questions today?
No, I would just say I think pharmacy is a great career. There are a lot of different opportunities and career paths you can take within the profession. It's just really important to really just explore all avenues. There are a lot of different opportunities out there that aren't your traditional career paths, and I think leaning in, identifying what it is that you want to do and seeing what's out there or establishing your own path, I think will allow you to really align with your purpose within the profession. So I just encourage those to really don't accept what the traditional path may look like for others or what you've been accustomed to learn through pharmacy school, really being open-minded, connecting the dots in different areas to really find something that aligns with your true purpose.
Yeah, and as a shameless plug, they can do that by watching Pharmacy Pathways and podcast. That's literally what this platform is for, to expose a pharmacist, current pharmacist, future pharmacist to what's out there. So I thank you, because now they have a lot of insight into director of pharmacy. And I know that that may look different in different health systems, as you shared, but this was a wealth of information. So I thank you so much for your time, sharing your wisdom, your strategies. And we'll close by telling the audience, as always, we wish them that they stay blessed and stay curious. And we are out for now.
Take care.
You just watched an episode of Pharmacy Pathways, a podcast created to help current and future pharmacists find their happy place in life. I'm your host, DomThePharmacist, and I interview different pharmacists from various careers, asking them the questions you'll likely need answered in order to know if that particular role aligns with your interests, passions, skill sets, and talents. If there's a specific topic or career you'd like to see featured, you can let me know by filling out the audience feedback survey on my website. And if you'd like to be a guest, there's a guest sign-up form on my website as well. Both of those links are in the episode description. Thank you for watching. Stay blessed and stay curious. I'm out.